Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clocked In with the Press, hosted at Altman Studios in Brentwood, California. We are here to spread some news and spill some tea and make sure that you, our listeners, are both informed and entertained. Not everything stated in this podcast is supported by or reflects the beliefs of the press. If you have something to say, let us know on our Twitter or Instagram at PressClockedIn or on Facebook at thepress.net. You can also stay updated on the latest stories through our website at www.thepress.net. This is your host, Caitlin Gleason, clocking in. So for the story of the day, we're talking about foster care nationally and in the Bay Area. For some basic information and background on the topic, here are some national statistics on the matter. 424,000 youths were counted to be in foster care in 2020, and according to the National Foster Youth Institute, less than 3% of foster youth will graduate from four-year university, and about half of foster youth will drop out of high school in a given year, so about 200,000 according to the 2020 number. Next, overall, 40% of foster youth have educational difficulties, and students in foster care are more likely to attend the lowest performing schools. So with this context in mind, and before we go too deep into that topic, let's review the top stories of the week. California Governor Gavin Newsom declared victory over an effort to recall him amid his first term. Larry Elder, the conservative talk show host who likely was to become governor if Newsom lost, is claiming foul play on a new web portal. The Associated Press, NBC, CNN, Politico, ABC, and others declared the recall effort had failed after polls closed Tuesday night. Several counties that were expected to lean slightly in Newsom's direction were soundly in his favor. As of 9 p.m. on Tuesday, 67% of voters chose not to recall Newsom. Contra Costa County has joined San Francisco, Berkeley, and other communities across the U.S. with a county-wide health order that increases COVID-19 safety in restaurants, gyms, and other indoor businesses where there is elevated risk of the virus spreading. The new order, effective September 22nd, requires patrons of these businesses to show proof that they are fully vaccinated to enter indoor areas or a negative COVID-19 test result from within the previous 3 days. Contra Costa has endured a severe spike in COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations this summer. While the peak of the surge seems to have passed, data shows that the county's daily case rate remains as high as it was last February. There were 15 COVID-related deaths in Contra Costa from August 25th to the 31st, and 20 from September 1st to the 7th, the two highest 7-day totals since March. Unvaccinated residents account for 95.9% of the county's deaths so far, according to the county health department. The new order applies to businesses where people remove face coverings to eat or drink indoors, such as restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues, and to gyms and other indoor fitness facilities, including yoga and dance studios, where patrons breathe more heavily when they are exercising. The order also includes a requirement for workers in indoor areas of these businesses to show proof of full vaccination against COVID-19 by November 1st or test weekly for COVID-19. For proof of vaccination, patrons must show photo ID and their vaccination record cards from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or copies or pictures of their cards. Documentation from healthcare providers will also be accepted, as will digital COVID-19 vaccine records issued by the state of California. Next, East County residents may soon see a long-awaited increase in firefighting and rescue resources after the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District, CONFIRE, Board of Directors approved a resolution to annex the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District, or ECCFPD. CONFIRE's board, which is composed of the county's Board of Supervisors, unanimously approved the resolution Tuesday, September 14th. The ECCFPD Board of Directors took up the issue yesterday on September 16th, and information on their decision has not been disclosed yet. Next up, an Oakley native is serving aboard USS Iwo Jima, a U.S. Navy Wasp-class amphibious assault ship. Petty Officer 3rd Class Benjamin Martin is a 2019 Freedom High School graduate, and today Martin serves as a machinery repairman. Machinery repairmen use large machines such as lathes and mills to manufacture parts that the ship may need to make repairs. They fix pieces that may be damaged or worn out from routine use. As a member of the U.S. Navy, Martin, as well as other sailors, know they are a part of a service tradition providing unforgettable experiences through leadership development, world affairs, and humanitarian assistance. Their efforts will have a lasting effect around the globe and for generations of sailors who will follow. Last up, in hometown sports, Heritage High School football team took on Clovis East in an afternoon game on Saturday, September 11th. The Patriots were penalized by more missed opportunities than their opponents, and after putting up a good fight, the Patriots lost 35-14. Saturday's game was played at Liberty because it was part of the Northern California Honor Bowl, a high school football showcase event featuring 4 games. At the end of each game, the Honor Bowl awards 2 players per team, one for showing the most character and the other for being his team's MVP. Junior running back Devin Rivers won the MVP, while junior linebacker Brock Lombardi earned the Character Award. Those were the top stories of the week. Let's get back to the main topic of the day. Here to talk with me further about it are 2 members of Aspiranet, a local foster care organization. Folks, allow me to introduce you to Lori Matthews and Jenny Kiles. Hi.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. And so tell me a little bit about what each of you do in Aspiranet. Lori, why don't you go first?
Okay. I am the core program director for Aspiranet, the foster care side and also foster and adopt side. I also help run the REACH program, which is a post-adoption for Contra Costa County.
Oh, okay. And Jenny?
I'm a home study writer, which means that when a family's finished training, I get an opportunity to go into their home, do the inspection, and just kind of determine whether they're ready to be foster parents. There's quite a lot of grid to go through and write it up.
Yeah, so dealing with a lot of people and like kind of those relations that you kind of see between individuals and stuff.
Yeah. And checking in with people in their extended family and things like that to make sure that we're reading them correctly.
Okay. And so how long have you both been involved with Aspiranet or just foster care in general?
Well, I've been employed by them just shy of 2 years. But I've been around foster care for over 30.
Yeah, and I've been involved in foster care for about 12 years. Started as a social worker, though, 7 years ago. Felt like I wanted to create more of a change. And as a foster parent, I didn't have as much say. So I decided to become a social worker.
Okay. So you were a foster parent as well as just working with foster
Correct.
care. Okay. And so on to the topic of, Aspiranet. Overall, how many cases does Aspiranet handle on like a yearly basis?
The last fiscal year, Aspiranet cared for over 500 children in foster care. The Antioch office cared for 25. And when you look at the total number of children in foster care, it doesn't seem like a big number, but every single one of those children has a sense of belonging and care they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Okay. And so Aspiranet, correct me if I'm wrong, does it work mainly in the Bay Area or is it more nationalized?
So Aspiranet has 21 offices from Northern California to Southern California.
Okay.
We have one of our biggest offices is in LA, but we also provide so many services just incorporated in the whole being of the family unit. So it's not just foster care. You're talking behavioral health. You're talking extended foster care or our transitional aged youth, or NRTA is what we call it. And we also do in-home services for families who are struggling, whether it's drug addiction, anything like that. So very broad scope of trying to keep family units together.
Okay, so it's not just bringing families together, it's keeping families together and keeping them from falling apart. Okay, and so of those 500 cases, you said?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so of those 500 cases, how many of those are teenagers versus how many of those are kids below, say the age of 11?
So approximately, in our statistics, in our agency, it's about 50-50. So approximately 50 of the children are below the age of 11 and 50% are over. This is why we focus so much on fostering teens. They've likely been in the foster care system the longest, and potential foster families are under misconception that fostering teens is harder. The truth is you have the opportunity to provide guidance and support at a point in their lives when they need it the most. And just on a personal note for this, I know that's what happened to me when my husband and I got into fostering. We only wanted to do babies.
Right.
And unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of babies. We just didn't see, there weren't a lot of placements. And the one that we did, somebody else ended up getting that placement. So 2 days before Christmas, the county worker had called us and asked us if we wanted to foster a 15-year-old girl. And we thought, well, it's 2 days before Christmas. Why not? Let's do it.
Right.
And we did, and we never looked back. And then that's all we ever did was teens after that, because they are more independent. You don't have to run after them. You don't have to change diapers. You don't have to.
No car seats.
No car seats. But it definitely changed, I know, my perspective, and I'm sure Jenny can also attest to that. Just changes your perspective of, the how to care for those kids and what they need, which is age appropriate. So she's still our baby. She's still our girl, and I talk to her all the time too, and just to see a difference that you can make.
Right. And so, Jenny, did you also foster teenagers?
Oh, yeah. I've had over 70 of them in my home over the years.
Wow.
I started being a foster parent at 22 years old, so I've been doing it for a long time. But one of the things I like to bring out is when you have little kids in the foster care system, a lot of times they really are still going to be going back home. But by the time a kid's been in the system and as a teenager, there's a really good chance they're not going back home. Not always, but really good chance. And about the time they hit 15 or so, they start to realize, oh my God, I have nobody out there. I don't have a support system. And they become softer in some ways. They do want guidance. And I'm not saying they enjoy every minute of it because they're still teenagers, but they are in some ways more pliable than what you'd find with your own kids sometimes.
Right.
And I've had my own kids, so I can compare. Because they realize they're going to need you there, and they start to pay attention to things in a way that other kids don't, because our own children kind of take us for granted.
Yeah, like they're
Whereas
like,
the
oh,
foster
you're always
kids
going to be
appreciate
there.
it. Yeah, So, once you work with the teenagers, I can't picture working with the little people that I had to say goodbye to and never hear from again. Whereas the teenagers, no matter who tells them they should or shouldn't talk to you, they're will if they want
to you.
Right.
Especially when they need a few bucks.
Especially when every teenager has a phone. So they're like, what do you mean I can't? It's on speed dial.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in your experiences or your expertise, either as, foster parents or as foster workers, what are some of the biggest challenges for foster children or foster parents?
Well, for this one, I'm going to say, as far as Aspiranet, I know for us, it's being able to get the homes to foster the teens and that to foster the sibling sets, because you don't want to be separated from your family. And I couldn't imagine these children are already coming from a loss because they're being taken from their home. And then on top of that, to, be separated from your siblings because you all have to be put in different homes because there's not enough rooms for you in a particular home. And even right now, we do have, at least in Sacramento County, we have a home that was able to take a sibling set of 5.
Wow.
And they had 1 kid. So they have 6 kids in their home right now, which is what they can have. That's capacity. Huge home, beautiful home, great parents. And they just opened up their hearts to take the entire, and you're talking from the age of, I believe, 8 up to the one is turned 18 or just turned 18.
Wow.
So
it's like a big age span to kind of have 5 different kids. I mean, my mom has a total of 7 kids, so I get it. that big gap. But wow, that's a lot of kids. Okay. And then Jenny, kind of what do you think is some challenges that, foster children or foster parents face?
I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about what foster kids are. And a lot of people look at them like they're little mini criminals or something. It's not the case. I never ran into problems with all the kids in my home. I think once or twice I had police involvement. And it was things like trying to push over a lamppost in a new construction area or something. It was like, woo, really heavy. Nobody ever stole anything, beat up anything. And yet we tend to want to mark them as if they're damaged goods or mean, terrible people. And they are the victims. In most cases, we've got families that just didn't have what it took to keep going. When you've got a single mom that's struggling, she's struggling, and they don't always make it. And so we support them while they pull their household together. I just think it's that misconceptions.
Yeah, and so do you think that, like media or like, movies and TV shows like kind of have a hand in painting foster children in that kind of light, or?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think about the movie Instant Family, where you have to be able to see it from the eyes of the child in the perspective of them coming from trauma. And what we see as a child misbehaving, a child throwing things, is from the lens of trauma. The child is trying to communicate something that they can't communicate. They don't know how. They don't know what that looks like. They have all these feelings inside them, even teenagers, where they act out. So I think the idea that these children are actually coming from a place of hurt, and so they're seen as, just misbehaving or not listening. And in all honesty, if you see it from a different lens and you see it from that trauma lens, you're able to say, this child is actually going through something right now, and we need to be able to get down to their level and help them. So, and I think that's where a lot of that comes from. But I don't necessarily think that the media or movies or anything portrays them in a different way. It's just the way I think our society handles children sometimes.
Right.
And we have to be able to grow and develop to be able to help a child where they're at instead of automatically putting our own beliefs and values on
Right.
on a
Okay,
child.
so it's more like understanding that when a kid misbehaves, it's not because they're trying to cause trouble. It's because there is something behind it that we should be able to talk to them about or help them get through.
And sometimes they may not even know what that is. But that's, as the adult, that's what the job is. Even as, our foster parents, that's what your job is. To get into the, and open that communication and try to explore those emotions, even when they don't want to.
Which is why our agency and all foster care agencies support the families with social workers that are in their homes in most cases every week. And that's because we are there to help them understand trauma and understand that, okay, this is driving you crazy, but let's look at why. So it's not something that a foster parent needs to go in having psychological background and being able to, understand it all themselves. That's what we're there for.
Right. Okay. So you're like, oh, you think it drives you crazy. It's driving them crazy and helping them kind of like make that connection together. Yeah. Okay. And so to kind of like, localize this subject now a little bit, here in Contra Costa County, or Eastern Contra Costa County, I personally have never heard too much about foster care, being that common or active, it just like hasn't come into conversation with me with like, the people that I'm associated with. So kind of, is this idea a misconception? And if yes, like how, big of a kind of community is this in Eastern Contra Costa County that people just don't realize?
I know that in Contra Costa County alone, there's over 1,000 kids in foster care.
Wow.
We don't, I call it the invisible population. I know I've heard that saying from other people as well. It's an invisible population. People don't necessarily automatically go to the fact that when a child is taken from the home, they go into foster care. And it ranges from the majority of, and the reason why children are taken from their homes is neglect. Second is drug abuse. And it's something that people need to realize within the invisible population, that there are kids that are out there that need good, loving homes to be able to have a stable life at some point. So, 1,000 kids that are not with their parents for one reason or another right now.
And I don't know if you know the statistic, but do all of those 1,000 kids have parents that they're with, foster parents that they're with right now? Or kind of if a kid isn't with a parent, I can English. If a kid is able to go with a parent, kind of how does that kind of all play out?
I think they all, within a few days, they're all in the home of someone. Whether that is a permanent looking home or one that's just very temporary, because there are emergency homes that are short term. They all have to be somewhere. We don't have very many mechanisms for holding kids, just like more than a few days. but to find, again, it's an area where we have such a lack of foster parents. To find a good match for a kid so that you can put a kid in a place where they can really settle in and start to feel the stability that they need. And that's where you hear of kids all the time that they just bounced around from home to home. Well, it's because the first 2 or 3 homes they were in were very temporary. There was already 4 or 5, 6 needy children, and the parents took them only because they needed a place that night. It never was intended for the kid to stay there long term because it wasn't the right place for them. And the best situation would be if we had 2 or 3 beds for every one of those kids so that we could pick the right home that could be the right match for them.
Right. Okay. And so I guess kind of on that note of, foster parents and like the availability of foster parents, what's the current ratio from, foster child to availability of foster parents?
So right now, Aspiranet has been able to place 5% of the children that are referred by the county. We don't have enough foster families willing to open their hearts or their homes. So when you're talking about having 1,000 kids that may or may not be in foster care, we've only been able to place 5% of those.
Wow.
And it's not a lot. We're always wanting to have families come forward and offer, if they have a home, to be able to offer themselves up to that child. And you don't know what you're gonna you don't know what to expect once you become a foster family, but you do have the support of the agency, the support of the social worker, and it's difficult. It's really hard. And I appreciate you so much talking about this topic because it's something that people don't talk about.
They don't. It just doesn't go across people's conversations very much.
Nope. And so when you think about how small of a percentage even our agency is able to place these kids, we always want to do the best match possible. So we always, because we look at the longevity and the long term of what the stability of that child means. So we're not doing what they call heads in beds. We don't do that. We try to get the best fit as possible because we want that child to be able to have that permanency if that's what happens. Now, not all cases go into permanency. Most of them are in reunification. We want kids to be with their families. We don't want to be, if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have foster children. We wouldn't have to have foster homes. But the idea of the foster home is much better than an orphanage or a group home, So, and I know there's no more orphanages in America, but the idea of being in this institutionalized, home.
And I think realistically, that's what is happening to the majority of our teenagers that are in foster care. I would say we probably get, just my little Antioch office probably gets 2 to 3 calls a day for teenage placements, and I can place maybe 1 a month out of that. So those kids are going somewhere, and I'll tell you where they're going in most cases is to a short-term group home, which short-term I'm talking 6-8 months, hopefully, and then they try again. And so we're telling a kid who's been already in an abusive or chaotic life, we're telling them, okay, now we still are going to just make your life chaotic. We're going to make your life institutionalized. And then we wonder why at 17, 18, they don't have any foundation to get on their own 2 feet.
Right.
And we aren't giving them stability if we don't have families that can show them what a boring Monday through Friday looks like and how whoop-de-doo weekends can look. We need to show them stability and provide that for them. And they don't get that if they're getting thrown into group home environments because we just don't have the homes.
Okay, so they kind of just lose that main support system. And then because of the lack of foster parents, it's hard to find them another support system to keep them moving forward.
And quite frankly, by the time they turn 18, they've become, they're used to people just saying, oh, I'm here for you, and then being gone. Oh, I'm here for you, I'm being gone. Tell us your story, and being gone. They're wore out from it. So we have a moment in time, and that's when they first come to placement. We need to find homes for them, not institutions.
Sorry.
No, go.
One of the interesting quotes that that I remember from, her name's Suzanne Schultz, and she works in San Joaquin County. One of the things that she said one time was, it's really hard to put down roots, or to have these kids put down roots when they've never had that stability. They've never been able to be in one home, let alone, if they're in many homes. So when they turn 18 and they go into this great program that California has, a transitional housing program, how are they supposed to put down roots when they've never had it before?
They don't know like how to put those roots down and how to kind of help build themselves that community and that form of support. And so I guess, with that, do you feel like participation by parents in foster care has either increased or stayed the same or decreased, especially with the pandemic and all of that?
It's increased a little, I think.
Yeah, it has increased. We've been finding that there's more participation, and the impact of the pandemic has allowed parents to realize that they want to be home with their children to reduce commute time. Becoming a foster parent can allow them to do this, and at the same time, helping children in their community. We've all had the opportunity to look at our priorities during this time. For many people, the new normal means becoming foster families, which is great.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And so similarly, for the number of foster children who are kind of in the program, have you found that the number of foster children in either Contra Costa or even just California has increased or decreased over the past year or so?
So what's interesting about this is one of the larger, I guess, issues that we've seen during the pandemic is there were less children in school, and because there were less children, they were doing a lot of online. The amount of abuse that was reported overall was cut in half.
Wow.
So there was 50% less actual calls for abuse or neglect because, these kids would go to school and then the teachers have eyes on them. And as mandated reporters, you have to report. There isn't a choice. If you are in the school or if you're a social worker and you see some type of abuse or neglect, it has to be reported. So that was an interesting statistic. But what we also saw was an increase of teens because the teens can self-report.
Oh.
So that actually went up, which is why we are still constantly looking for homes for teenagers because, one, people want babies, they want little ones over taking kids who are, been in the system. So I think there was a disparity with that too, but it was really interesting. And thus far, since kids have been in school, we've definitely seen more an increase in the younger ones. And just overall to be able to have extra eyes on kids, maybe when, they need to.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't necessarily that the need for foster care decreased, but rather that the actual just number of reports of kids that needed it decreased because there were less people around to kind of see that there was a problem in that kid's life. Okay, that is a very interesting kind of way to look at it.
Well, and I think I've seen some information that would imply that there really was possibly a higher level of abuse happening when you've got kids at home with parents and no one watching. The emergency rooms were seeing a growth in that when they would come in. And so it doesn't mean kids were being treated any better. It means that they weren't being found, being cared for.
Okay. And so I guess when it comes to the, foster care system and this idea that, we need to kind of pull kids out of bad places so we were able to give them a better home and stuff. I know that sometimes people kind of view the foster care system, and I say foster care system with like a trademark next to it because I feel like that's a term that people kind of use. They view it as very flawed and kind of lacking in different ways. And so how does that stigma affect foster families or children or just the system in general?
So we have to remember that children in foster care did absolutely nothing to get there. They're children just like every other. They crave love, guidance, discipline, and stability. So I wouldn't necessarily say the system in and of itself is flawed. We just have to sometimes come up with the better ways to look at the situation. Foster parents do sometimes get a bad rap. And, being part of it, we're lucky to say that you can make the difference. I can make the difference. Ginny can make the difference. Whomever decides that they want to become a foster parent can make the difference. And it does take one person. Now, is there good and bad to everything? Of course there's good and bad to everything. But again, just being able to have a conversation about it so that an invisible population doesn't become invisible or doesn't stay invisible.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And so, have there been any stories or cases that you can share that have kind of just stuck out to you both in your time with Aspiranet or even in your time as foster parents? I love when there's a laugh free to go before the
I just
answer.
have so many stories. I don't even know where to begin. I can just tell you, being a long-term foster parent with all these kids, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, this isn't a specific story, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And both of my sons now have found their life partners, my biological sons, and both of them are looking at being foster parents themselves, bringing to it their experience of growing up in it. So they didn't hate me for it. And that's one of the things people will say with foster care. Oh, I'll do it when my kids grow up, or, wait until I've been a parent already or whatever, or till I retire. There's no reason to wait. Just add somebody into your life. Just a little somebody. You don't have to do it in a big way like I ended up eventually doing it in a big way. I didn't start out that way. I started out with one teenage girl and I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 infants. And quite frankly, part of my motivation for taking a teenager was, hey, somebody can chase the toddler while I'm taking care of the baby. And you know what? It worked out great. And she and I are still close friends, or family, whatever. I'm still her mom. And she's 40-something now. And she has herself been a foster parent at different periods throughout her adult life. So it's just about being caring. It's just about being open-armed. And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Okay.
And I know there are some stories that have stuck with me, and some kids that have stuck with me that will stick with me forever. If you look at the downs, the darker side to it, the sadder side, there have been cases where, one of the little boys, he was 1.5 years old, and, most of them, their bodies are cartilage. And when he went to they did an MRI on him, and he had 23 broken bones from head to toe. And he was 1.5 years old. And that case has always stuck with me. He did get reunified with mom, which we want to see, but they were never able to find out who did that to him. And that was really difficult. And those are the cases when you're a social worker that stick with you, and they do kind of make you jaded, Is there any hope? But there is hope. There's always hope. And even in the stories that Ginny just shared, even for myself, with my older, she's my adopted daughter, even though we didn't officially adopt her, she's my adopted daughter. And she's made strides to do and be better, be a better person. And that's what we ask for. And you'll always be there. And when you have those teens, like Ginny said earlier, they will reach out to you, whether or not they want money or just your time, or just to tell you that they love you and, thank you for everything that you've done for them. That makes all the difference in the world.
I had a boy in my home for not more than 8 weeks, 9 weeks maybe. And I, by the way, was a foster parent the second half of my life as a single mom. So I had a lot of teenagers as a single mom. And this young guy left my house in kind of it was not a great situation. To be honest, I can't even remember just why he left, but it was not a good thing. And he went off, and 3 years later or something, I get this call, and he says, "Can I come by?" And I'm like, "Sure. How have you been?"
You're
and
like, long time no see.
And he shows up with this beautiful young woman who was very pregnant. And he said, I just wanted to introduce my, fiance to you. And I'm like, why? In my mind, I'm like, we didn't ever clicked. We never really were that great together. And he says, this was the only time I ever really felt like I had a family. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor kid. At the point that he lived with me, there were 6 teenagers in my house. My own biological was one of them. And me. And that's his best idea of what a family should look like. And I thought, holy God. But he wanted to bring, this young woman back to see what his family felt like. Mm-hmm. And that was what he had done. And he made a vacation just to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things you have to remember is we never know when we're making an influence and what that piece will be. For me, it was nothing with this particular young man, mm-hmm. but not to say he didn't matter to me. I'm just saying I didn't feel like I had any influence. I didn't feel like he got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he did get something out of it. And with any hope, that little one that was about to be born, has benefited from it. Mm-hmm. And maybe in some small way we could have broken a cycle that we're all concerned about as a society, I think.
Okay, that's beautiful. Are there any others? I love hearing this. Do you have any more?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
There's just so many of them.
There are a lot, but I know for me is the adoption side, because with Aspiranet we do foster, but we do foster to adopt. So we're not a private adoption agency, so you can't come to us and do a private adoption. But we also offer this foster to adopt side. So when parents are ready, because we do a very meticulous, safe home study on the homes, once they're ready to adopt, if that's what happens with this child or the child that's in their home, then and they're free and clear from the county to be adopted, then we go ahead and we do help process paperwork, get everything ready. And so for me, I know it's just the idea of going to those adoption signings. And when we have our own foster parents who end up adopting those kids, just those such great, happy days in the court, and the judge signs off on the paperwork, and just to me that's another very positive and wonderful experience, and I get to experience that with these families.
Yeah, no, I sometimes I like to watch like little videos on Instagram that make me happy cry,
Yeah.
And this one video I remember watching where this girl who was a foster child of her foster parents, for Christmas she gave her foster father a adoption papers packet, and he just starts crying because she had already filled it out and signed to herself and stuff, and he starts crying, and I was sitting there 2 a.m. in bed oh my God, this is so beautiful. But no, that is I think a beautiful moment about fostering, and you're able to the idea of found family and the power that is really able to have.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Along that same line, I just have to say that we have lots of those moments, those good teary-eyed moments, and it could be something with one kid as simple as he got through the whole day without his teacher being mad at him. Yay! Or
he didn't throw a pencil at his classmate.
Or they went through the whole week and slept at night and didn't have nightmares. That's awesome. And to see your foster parents do a little happy dance because they got through the struggle. And I think that's part of what I like about foster care is every day you get to have a little cheering section for something.
Yeah.
Something goes right often, and it's really exciting.
Yeah. Okay. And so, to get it moving again a little bit, on that note of you mentioned the foster to adoption program. So are there any other special programs that Aspiranet is kind of heading at the moment, weak in English here, heading at the moment to either promote more community involvement or to increase success for foster children?
So for Aspiranet, we have our Intense Services Foster Care Program. We try to also, like I said, have more parents foster teens and foster those sibling groups. So the Intense Service Foster Care Program is where a child who may have more challenging behaviors is set up with a support counselor and set up with more intense services to try to keep them in the home.
Okay. And so aside from actual fostering, because not everybody has the ability to be a foster parent, how can a person either be of help or be involved in foster care?
So for us, it's definitely donations. Donations, they help because Aspiranet is a nonprofit with a gold rating with Charity Navigator. Children and families in foster care and foster adopt programs can always use the financial support and supplies for outings and anything that the families may need extra. I know sometimes at Christmas we'll do some type of either holiday program or a holiday party for the kids and for the parents. You can also go to Amazon, Amazon Smile. Aspiranet's on Amazon Smile. I know I have mine set up for Aspiranet. So every time you go and you buy anything off Amazon, then a little bit of money here and there gets contributed to Aspiranet overall. People can apply also for positions to work with children in the child welfare system, and those positions are on our website at aspiranet.org/careers.
Okay. And so, for a person who does want to, become a foster parent, how long does it take to be approved as a foster parent? Average.
We shoot for 3 months. Quite often it'll be maybe 6 or so. A lot of it just depends on how quickly you get through your training and how quickly you turn in your paperwork. And then we come into your house. If your house needs a lot of work, that might take a little longer. And by a lot of work, it might be things like having to put a security fence around a built-in swimming pool or providing lock boxes to put medication in and things like that. And then basic cleaning. Gotta have a decent house. Not necessarily a nice house, but fancy or anything like that. But it does need to be tidy.
And we're open to all parents too. All parents.
Oh yeah.
Single parents. It could be same-sex couples. It doesn't matter. We're looking for any families that are willing to again open their home and their heart to a foster child.
Right. Okay.
My parents in their mid-80s have just finished fostering a young man who's moving into his own place. He was there all through his high school years. So I wouldn't necessarily think that was the best situation, but but it worked for them. It worked for him, and he graduated from high school and is now getting his first apartment through the AB-12 program, which is what they do with youth as they transition out.
Okay. And so then, last question that I really have for you guys is, what do you think is the most important thing for people to know about foster care?
So kids who are in the foster care system, I know we kind of talked about this before, aren't bad. They're not. They're in the foster care because something happened to them. And there are kids who have experienced trauma, and being placed in a foster home is a traumatic event in of itself. Foster children need a safe place with structure and unconditional support in order to thrive. Yeah. So I think that is something that's really important that people don't necessarily know or think about. Again, it's the invisible population. So just to shed light on it, I think is amazing.
I agree. Yeah. I see that too. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both so much for coming in to talk with me today.
Well, thank you.
Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of Clocked In with the Press. What are your thoughts on the topic for today? What are misconceptions that you have heard about foster care? And are there people that you know who are connected to the foster care system? Let us know on our Twitter or Instagram at PressClockedIn or on Facebook at thepress.net. You can also keep up with the latest East Contra Costa County events and updates at www.thepress.net. There are a million people with a million stories, and I hope to cover them one episode at a time. This is your host, Caitlin Gleason, clocking out.